Now we're moving into the Ignite portion of our day. Who here knows what Ignites are? So like 5 of you. Ignites are fun. It's a really, some people think that presenting is challenging. Number one, fear over death. At least that's what people say about speaking. Ignites are 5-minute presentations with auto-advancing slides. So my personal opinion is that Ignites are more difficult than hardly any other type of presenting. And now we're about to begin those. I think it's really cool. This is among my favorite types of presentations. I always take tips from the people who give them because I'm a little intimidated. One day I'll have to build one. I've not done it yet. Now we have Jason Yee is going to be coming up and joining us. Hopefully, I didn't ruin his name. He's joining us from Portland, so he's come a long way here. He's going to be sharing with us what he learned about engineering by being a chef. Please welcome Jason.
Thanks. As Warner mentioned, I'm Jason. I'm an evangelist at Datadog, where I try to work to inspire developers and engineers with the power of monitoring. But not so long ago, I was actually a chef, and not the config management type like Jody, who was up here earlier, but an actual restaurant chef. See, like most people, I really like to cook. It's a fun, creative hobby. It brings people together. So I decided I'd up my game by going to the local culinary school, taking a few classes. And at the end of it, the head chef instructor was like, you know, you knew too much. You really ought to quit your job and go work in a restaurant. So I never actually quit my job. I liked being a developer, but I did go work in a restaurant. And while I worked in the restaurant, I actually came to discover that restaurant cooking is an endurance sport with fire and knives. So like all sports, there's this goal to continuously improve. And so I worked with this chef, Chef Troy Gard. And while I worked with Troy, my goal to continuously improve was to make the perfect sushi taco. And as we'll see in the next slide, sushi tacos are great. They're these little mini tacos with sushi on them. So with a sushi taco, you know, this one's got a little bit of rice hanging out the front, and the tuna's not cut evenly. So as I understood the components of what would make the perfect sushi taco, I decided that I really ought to buy myself a really nice sushi knife so that I could cut the perfect tuna. And I think there's a great corollary with DevOps, and that's that oftentimes we don't take that time to understand the components of what we're building, and we like to we like to obsess about the new shiny tool. My job wasn't to be a fish busher. You know, it really was to make sushi tacos. So we have to do that with DevOps. We have to understand the components of what the systems that we are building, what those components are, how to optimize them. So now when I say that cooking is this endurance sport with fire and knives, like a lot of sports, the goal is to be quick. But when you're doing that with fire and knives, that can be incredibly dangerous. So the key to working safely with fire and knives is to work cleanly. Earlier this year, I spent some time at Atelier Crenn, and while I was there, I actually learned that they stopped production, or they stopped preparation in the middle of the afternoon, and they scrubbed down the entire kitchen from ceiling to floor. And they do so once again right before dinner service starts at 5, and once again at the end of the night. And this can seem really excessive when most restaurants just do it at the end of the night, but it became really clear and really obvious that the caliber of food that they produce and at the speed they produce it could only be done by working cleanly. So there's an obvious relation to what we do, and that's you have to deal with technical debt, right? You can't continue to innovate. You can't continue to push features that actually work while you're accumulating debt. You really have to take the time, stop, and actually deal with your technical debt. But more than the tools and techniques that we use, when you're cooking, there's one main goal, and that's to make things that taste delicious. And the only way that you can actually do that is to taste everything for yourself. Modern dishes are composed of a lot of ingredients and a lot of components. And you have to understand how these flavors combine, right? How the ingredients build on each other to create something that's delicious. And there's a corollary to the systems that we build today. They're complex systems, they're dynamic, and they're changing. And just like with a dish, where you have a lot of things coming together and one bad ingredient can ruin an entire dish, one bad component in your systems, in your applications, can take the entire thing down. So just like chefs say that you ought to taste everything, with what we build today, you have to monitor everything. There's simply no other way to know if our systems, our applications, if they're operational, if they're performant, if they're doing what we think they ought to be doing without actually monitoring them. So I'm always surprised by chefs, right? I worked part-time as a chef. I was still a developer. I made plenty of money. But a lot of chefs are working for minimum wage. And then a lot of chefs are going beyond that, and they're working at these really notable restaurants and under these great chef masters, and they're working for free just to learn things. And at the same time, though, chefs are often eating in these incredible restaurants, places that you and I would wait months to get reservations at. And when they're eating at these places, they're often eating for free. And the interesting thing is that kitchens aren't naturally empathetic places, but there's an industry-wide empathy. So Eric, who was up here earlier today, and the amazing crew at PagerDuty actually sent us at Datadog a bunch of cupcakes and this note of encouragement, because earlier this year we had this fairly public security incident. And some people call this hug ops, but really whatever you call this industry-wide empathy, I think it's something that we need to share. You know, cupcakes will never solve our outages or our security breaches, but empathy is what makes our industry better. It's what makes the DevOps community better. So whatever you consider that to be, it's something that you need to embrace and start to share. So those are just a few of the things that I learned while I was working as a chef. But I wanted to leave you with one final thing to ponder that I think is the most important. And that is, where are we all going to dinner?